I know I was irresponsible, but please don't judge me. I could never have foreseen what would happen, and to say my life turned into a TV drama would be an understatement. I have always been interested in snakes. Ever since I was a little girl and first saw one on a nature documentary, I was fascinated. Every Christmas, I would write letters to Santa Claus asking for a snake, but I never got one. When I was old enough, my parents explained that they weren't comfortable with me getting one and that it was a huge responsibility. Well, when I turned 16, I decided I would just go out and buy one for myself. I'd saved up some money from my weekend job, and I'd got it into my head that I was old enough to do what I wanted. Well, that was the first mistake. I went behind my parents' back and bought myself a snake, and for 2 whole weeks I managed to hide him from them. But then one day, my little brother went into my cupboard and saw the glass tank, and he of course ran and told my parents. I was grounded for a month, and they threatened to take the snake back to the guy I had bought it from. Well, I cried, and eventually they gave in and let me keep him, even though they weren't happy about it. For a few months, everything was fine. He pretty much stayed in his tank, and I only took him out once or twice a day to let him slither along my arm, which he loved. I always had it in the back of my head that my little brother now knew where the snake was, but he didn't seem bothered by it. He was only 5 years old, so he'd probably forgotten about it. I was wrong. One day I came home from my Saturday job and my snake was gone. The tank was open and my snake was nowhere to be seen. Panic shot through my body. Who had done this? And how had they found the key? There was a padlock on the tank and I kept the key hidden in a little box beside my bed. I started looking everywhere. Under my bed, in the closet, and by the time I'd finished looking, my room looked like it'd been ransacked by robbers. I knew I had to tell my parents. And yup, they were just as angry as I'd expected they would be. And then my little brother appeared at the door with a guilty expression plastered across his face, and I knew instantly that he'd let it escape. How could he do this? Yes, he was only a kid, but seriously, who lets a snake loose? He could be anywhere by now. We looked all day, and when we still couldn't find him anywhere, we went to bed and thought about what we would do next. I barely slept that night, half expecting him to appear on my bed. But when I woke up, he was still missing. At breakfast, Mom said we should alert the neighbours. However, we didn't even need to because as I was biting into a slice of toast, I heard a blood-curdling scream from over the fence, and I knew that Nancy must have found my snake. I ran outside, and sure enough, Nancy was standing there screaming. But my snake wasn't there. I asked her if she had seen him, and she looked like she wanted to kill me. She started shouting at me, saying I was a disgrace for bringing a snake into our neighbourhood, and that she hoped he got run over by a car. She said he'd almost bitten her, and that she would call the police if she saw him again. I waited for her to go back inside, and then I started checking her garden. He had to be there. But I had no luck. I really hoped he hadn't gotten hurt. Later that day, I gave up. I was exhausted, and it was harder than you might think to find a snake. He was gone. I had to face up to it. I fell into a light sleep on the sofa and dreamt that my snake returned. But then I was woken with a start. An ambulance was blaring its siren on our street. Ambulances almost never came to our street. Mom heard it too and ran straight out to the street to see what was going on. 10 minutes later, she came back all out of breath. It was Lily, the old lady down the street. She'd fallen and banged her head and was unconscious. Mom asked me to help her go to Lily's house to get a bag of clothes and things that we could take to the hospital. We went into her house, and I went to the bathroom to get her toothbrush and things. And that's when I saw him. My snake! He was curled up in the sink. And then I realized. Lily must have found my snake and gotten such a fright that she fell and banged her head. That meant it was all my fault. There was only one thing for it. I had to tell Lily. Luckily, she was okay and had just banged her head. There was no lasting damage apart from some bruising. Mom was angry at me, and I felt so bad. I told Lily I was sorry, and then I told Mom to drive me to the local zoo so I could donate my snake to them. It was just too dangerous to keep at home, and I didn't want to risk it frightening anyone else. Do you know anyone who is raising a weird animal? Do you have any of your own? Or have you been a victim like Lily?